What's the fastest way you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? New IT guy asked me, accountant, if he could use my company card to process payments. I asked what payments does a freshly hired IT guy have that accounting purchasing can't take care of? His excuse was that the president emailed him personally asking for him to pay some invoices via some links he sent. Yup, IT guy fell for a phishing scam. Gone the following day. It was in that moment my company learned never have the director of finance oversee and hire for an IT-related role. For any business leaders reading this, don't put non-technical people in charge of hiring for technical jobs, and don't put the finance department in charge of IT. Both are recipes for a disastrous IT department. My boss hired this weird girl called Jen. Roy and I are so annoyed. We gave her a box and told her the internet was in it and she believed it. But you didn't give her the real internet, right? It's still safely locked away inside of Big Ben? This scam is so mind-blowing to me. Our company was bought out by an investment firm, but the old president still calls a lot of shots and everyone we bought out converts to our system. But as a result we've attained a few thousand extra employees in 2 years across the county. One of our techs, from another branch, got a scam email posing and the president asking this low-level tech to buy a bunch of business cards and send the code. IT sent screenshots to everyone to show an example of a scam text. It was obvious this very low-level tech was just wanting to go above and beyond for the literal founder of the company. He probably felt nervous the entire time. What an important task. But at no point did this low-level labor worker, vastly underpaid, think while he was driving to the store, grabbing the cards, purchasing them with his company card, sending the codes over text for those cards, and going back to work. Did he think, why is this multimillionaire who founded this huge company text me to do this very big transaction when we have an entire accounting department? I mean, darn dude. We hired a woman who turned out to be pretty abrasive. How she got hired, I have no idea. Our secretary was the sweetest lady in the office and never complained until this new hire talked with her for a few minutes. Right after talking to this horrible person, she approached the boss and said she would walk off the job if this new worker stayed on with us. By lunch half the office was ready to walk off the job because of this abrasive person. She just had an utterly horrible way of talking to people that made them feel degraded and enraged. She was let go at the end of the day. What field or type of job? In general. This was an office setting that works with healthcare. Sadly, something going on here. I had something similar on a different scale. Hired a person who seemed pretty legit. Coming in, could not understand how to gel with others well. No reason for it. The experience made me realize that many, if not most people have personality quirks that are resembling low-level autism. I include this with myself as well. Energy vampire. Colin Robinson has met his match. New guy offered to pull a semi-trailer to a dock for unloading. Said he did it in the army all the time. I told him, nah, you gotta get tested out by the safety guy first. Someone else will handle it. 5 minutes later, I see him pulling the trailer around anyway. Okay, I gotta go tell this dude he's fired 2 hours in. Before I could advise him of his updated employment status, the darn trailer came loose of the tractor. Slid right off the back. He did know how to drive a semi. He did not know how to check the trailer was locked in. Darn. If only you guys offered some sort of training for that. Basic PMCS. Was he Jay from the Inbetweeners? I can drive that easy. My dad used to park the lorries for Evel Knievel to jump over. Worked in a sales call center about 10 years ago. Real brain-dead work. New guy starts on a Monday morning. After he gets trained up on the basics, which takes about an hour, he gets assigned a desk and sets off to work. 30 minutes later, it looks like little puffs of steam are rising up from his computer monitor. Turns out he was vaping on one of those disposable e-cigarettes. The kind that sort of tried to look like real cigarettes. He gets told by the boss that we can't vape indoors. And if he wants to, he'll have to go outside to do it on a break. About 30 minutes later again, the same thing happens. He gets caught again, and is told in no uncertain terms that if he wants to keep his job, he'll stop vaping at his desk. An hour later, he gets caught hiding under his desk vaping, and is promptly fired. All before lunchtime. Dude could have just gone outside. Sounds like someone wanted to get fired. It's a possibility. Might have one of those dudes that speedruns a job so they can go back on unemployment for a few months without being asked questions. Unfortunately, I didn't keep in touch with the random office worker I shared a space with for 3 hours, so we'll never know. In my state you need a minimum of time at job to be eligible again. I know someone who was hired as a manager of some retail store. Being the manager, he thought he could show up whenever he darned well pleased on his fist day sign he's the boss. He showed up around noon and found the store closed. Turns out as the boss only he had the keys, so the staff couldn't open the store. Big boss man didn't have to worry about opening the store the next day. He no longer had a job. Honestly, that sounds like a failure of the owner to inform him that nobody else had keys to the place or tell him when his shift is or when he needs to be at the store. Kinda dumb to have someone on their first day be in charge of opening a store. I've noticed that turds tend to float to the top in retail. Not always. I've had some good supervisors, managers and owners. But generally I tend to think, how did this person survive so long without wandering into traffic or simming, let alone secure a middle management position? Some people get promoted to stop them from doing any real damage. I'm going to start using this analogy. Showed up and just instantly dropped her entire life story on the boss, preventing them from doing work and not doing any work her whole first shift. Boss gave her another chance and the next day she just sat in the back in tears over a text she got for the whole day. Darn, that must have been a long A text. A deep A text. A deep A text, if you will XKCD. A coworker sent an email to a female team member that he had a dream the night before that they had gotten married and he impregnated her. She sat across from me and I literally saw her face as she read the email. A strange look came across her face. Then she walked into the manager's office. She left the office and he got called in and less than a minute later was packing his things. I believe from start to finish it took less than 5 minutes for him to send the email and get fired. Just like in his dream. Literally lolled. You rogue. Caught one shooting up in their car an hour into their first shift. My girl used to wait tables when we were in college. A dishwasher got caught shooting up in the walk-in cooler. She said the manager happened to be the one who went to the cooler for simming, and she said when she opened the door the new guy had simming tied around his arm and he had just put the needle in his arm. When the door opened he looked up at the manager and backed down at the full syringe and shot it into his arm. Put the empty syringe in his pocket, untied with a sliker he used around his arm, and walked out to his car and left. The manager never even said you're fired, get out, nothing. She just stood there in stunned silence and dude just left. As a recovering H addict, I know that feeling. It's not like you're going to pull it out, mostly due to hitting a vein can be quite difficult sometimes. Not like you can hide the needle quickly and safely. And often you're sick until you use, so the best bet in the moment is to just press down. Get your fix and deal with, walk away from the consequences after. That's not just bleak, that's hairy and harrowing. Pizza delivery gig. New guy on his first shift. Claims he's got previous experience, so doesn't need training. Clocks in, grabs a few pizza orders ready for delivery, leaves with his car to deliver. An hour later, the calls start coming in about the status of their order. They haven't been delivered. The guy just grabbed himself a bunch of free pizzas and left. I secretly admired him. That's ballsy. That's BS. Employer would have home address, license, etc. Could easily have cops show up at their door. No one is going through a hiring process just to steal a few pizzas first day. The way we'd get free pizza when working the pizza shop was to accidentally put wrong ingredients on the pie and have to remake it. The incorrect pizza would end up in the break area or in the cooler to take home later. Got a speeding ticket, 20+ mph over, in the company car picking up lunch for the staff. Day 1. At my dad's old job. A worker was driving a company vehicle drunk and crashed and killed a family, and it bankrupted the business. What happened to that worker? I'd assume he's in jail. But many workers lost their job. And the owners lost their business because of that guy. Plus it's tragic people got killed. If you're so blotto that you're king other drivers. That's not just intoxicated. What a tragic story. New girl working as a cashier in a small retail shop. I worked there full time and it was just me and the owner. She was literally just hired so I could have weekends. Owner caught her sleeping in the back, on a nest of store t-shirts. He only came in to check after seeing her BF on the camera for over an hour, keeping watch while she napped. She barely made it a week. I used to work in a pizza shop and would always sleep during the slow times. The guy I replaced who trained me told me he did the same. I told the guy I trained the same. I'm not even sure why we were open. Before 5-ish we would only get like 10 orders a week. Less money than they were paying me to be there and nap. The new dishwasher told the hostess he wanted to F her in the eye in front of the entire staff and several early morning customers. It was borderline a mob. Wait, he said it in front of the staff and customers, or told her he wanted to do that with the staff and customers as an audience? In front of. It was like 15 minutes after open in a small cafe. So, I worked in a Chinese restaurant for a while. Was good stuff. 2 of my male colleagues got caught effing out the back. I recommended one of them. All of us got fired. Fun times. Why did you get fired? It's not your fault they couldn't keep it in their pants. They were holding the camera. Aw yeah, now put some beef in his broccoli. I work in software engineering and a couple of times I've seen people let go after like 2 weeks because they just couldn't do the job at all. Not me personally, but a former coworker told me about an incident at a prior job where the person who showed up to work was not the same person they interviewed. Obviously, they were immediately let go. I had a similar situation. Conducted a phone interview first and one of the candidates passed. She scored really well and was nice to talk to, so invited her to a face-to-face interview and trial shift. The person who turned up spoke next to no English and couldn't answer any questions. I ended the interview pretty quickly and apologized profusely to the HR manager. Was that through a recruiting firm? So many times we would phone interview, and they would do great, get them in and couldn't code or communicate. Turns out usually not the same person or they were being coached through the interview. I was training a new hire for a large online retailer who, at the time, focused on books, CDs and DVDs. One of the books we shelved was on Germany's U-boats. He suddenly felt the urge to tell me about all the wonderful and misunderstood ideas Der Führer had. He never even made it to his lunch break. We are a long way from Tipperary. You could say, he got Das Boot. I'm glad someone can follow my nonsense. A guy at my work was caught playing World of Warcraft for hours each day. Boss called him in and told him that was wholly unacceptable and he had to stop immediately or he'd be canned. Less than an hour later, IT calls the same boss and says the guy is back in his office playing again. He was let go that day. WoW is an addiction. I have many of friends who sunk years into that game. Digital age. It's a nightmare. I knew a dude that got canned from several jobs due to severe WoW addiction. Wouldn't surprise me if it's the same dude. Came 2 hours late, didn't do any actual work and then asked how long he has to keep doing tasks below his qualifications. Luckily for him, not very long I presume. I worked maintenance on a golf course. The owner hired this really hot girl to be the beverage cart girl. She had no experience, but I guess it doesn't matter when you're really hot. After about an hour of training, she gets sent out on the course in a cart full of booze. Later on that day, we start finding random trash across the golf course, consisting of empty airplane bottles and both full and empty bags of chips. We follow the empty airplane bottles like Hansel and Gretel until we find the beverage cart half submerged in a pond. By time we figured out what had happened, she had jumped in her car and left. Gee, I wonder what happened. A coworker grabbed my eye, and when another employee confronted him about it, the first guy called the second a lying word. That is some epic doubling down. If you're going down, go down in a blaze of glory. John Bon Jovi-ish. If you can't make a good entrance, you can at least make a heck of an exit. George Costanza. I work in IT on a proprietary program. We got a new employee a couple of years back that lasted maybe a month. He was very old, which itself isn't a problem. But he constantly fell asleep in our lab where anyone walking by could see him. One of our other colleagues sat with him every day to train him, but he kept doing weird things like deleting interfaces from the software we were working on. My manager at the time had a soft spot for him because he was a nice old man. But when it became clear that he was not only doing damage through his own actions, but using up additional resources by requiring one of us to babysit him while he worked each day, they fired him. I have this exact situation right now, but HR makes it hard to fire people. Probably nearly impossible to find someone new, so they hope that someone working at even 10% efficiency is better than nobody. New guy came in to work hammered out of his mind and started trying to operate a forklift right in front of the regional safety manager. A lot of forklift certified and right in front of my OSHA handbook memes were shared that day. Don't worry, ma'am, I'm forklift certified. And then proceeds to destroy several pallets full of stuff. In a restaurant they were fired within a few days. They were constantly sitting down on their phone while their coworker did all the work and would often not get up when asked to work. So weird. Why even get a job? The manager told me they seemed desperate for one. That's the difference between desperate for a job and desperate for a paycheck. Who's really desperate for a job then? Someone who needs a cover job to keep someone off their back. Could be to re-up on unemployment, appease a spouse, parent, GF or BF. Could be a condition of part of an early release from jail or diversion program type deal. Showed up in black metal face paint. I mean, it's a tattoo shop, but take a look around you and realize that all of our customers are soccer moms and suburbanites. What an odd thing to do, lol. He was a dork, a grown man who went by a nickname that he'd obviously given himself. Probably something really badass like Obsidian or Blood Raven. Huh? We hired a director for our office. About a week later the women in the office were complaining about him, saying he was cyst. Turns out he was in a meeting and a woman tried speaking and he told her that her opinion didn't matter. He was gone within a couple days. I wish SH like that actually got people fired at my past jobs. The CEO and some engineering staff had just interviewed a young woman for a job and they were in a conference room with the door opened. They all proceeded to talk about how hot she is and the CEO said I'd F her. I looked over and yelled, "Are you serious?" And they just slid the glass door closed. Absolutely egregious-ism. Sick poor taste. These guys were so gross. Worked second shift at a factory. Late in the evening, we would prop open the doors along the side street to try to catch a breeze in the summertime. One night, this drunk guy stumbles in through the side door and just starts striking up conversations with everyone like he owns the place. I run over and try to tell him that he can't be in there, and he starts telling me he's supposed to start work that night. We kind of argue for about 5 or 10 minutes about the fact that I didn't have anyone new starting that night, and I finally tell him that he needs to contact someone in the office the next morning. When I came into work the next day, the first shift supervisor told me that he was supposed to have a new guy start that day but he never showed up. I told him that the guy had actually shown up, 12 hours early and staggering drunk. In a way, he was fired before his first day on the job. Almost gotta feel bad for the guy. I'm sure he was excited about getting the job. I was a temp at a warehouse, a very unsafe one. They had pallets of canned fruit stacked on top of each other. He was dropping one on top of a stack and turned too early, which set off a domino effect. Probably like 40 pallets ended up getting wrecked, covering the whole area in fruit and syrup. Dude just turned the forklift off and left. He wasn't exactly fired, but I'm pretty sure on day 2 dumping a couple grand of products like that would have gotten him fired. Probably did that place a favor. Hey jackasses, stack yo SH better. Peace. I just fired someone after a 3-week stint, 5 call-outs, which he got written up for. Then he had a no-call, no-show when we had 2 deliveries going out. HVAC. Left me no choice. Working at a restaurant, we had someone no-call, no-show on their first day. They were informed there would not be a second day. Stealing from the gift shop and selling it in front of the building. Nice. Not me, but my husband. They hired a girl for sales, and she immediately interjected herself into every other department, telling them how to run things, and even making marketing decisions behind my husband's back. He's director of marketing, calling vendors about marketing, and creating a secret chat room that discussed marketing. Without my husband in it, lol. She never did any sales duties. She was fired within the week she was hired. Yes, the new employee who thinks they are smarter than everyone is insufferable. Rolled a blunt at the cash register, caught on camera and bam, fired. Deserved it. Either bring enough for everyone, or don't roll one at all. Or roll it in a bathroom stall like everyone else. 19-year-old new guy went and grabbed a beer from one of our work socials on his very first work break with the company. Not only was he underage, but we also worked on machines and were not allowed to partake in the beer. It was for people getting off shift or working in less hazardous roles. There were plenty of other acceptable refreshments to enjoy, but no, he went for the beer. What country do you work in? USA. I work for a commercial real estate brokerage and one of my colleagues hired an assistant. She sat in the cube next to mine. She asked me, "Is this job like hard?" She didn't show up for her second day. What was your answer? No, but I am. Both were fired. Saxophone and funky guitar start playing. New butcher at work showed up drunk every day for his first week. He went to the city his first weekend with us. We were living in a rural town, and he got robbed by a prostitute. He told the boss the story and they gave him an advanced payment and warning. He then made sual comments to all of our female coworkers until we reported him. He lasted a week and a half. Jesus Christ, I've only ever broken down fish professionally, but that's one job I'd want to be effing sober for. Sayasaku go slice lamau. When I was in college working at Walmart, cashier, I trained a girl on the register one evening. Maybe a week later, she comes through my lane buying groceries. I ask her how she's been, since I haven't seen her since the day after I trained her, and she tells me, unprompted, she's waiting on her court date. One of her friends went through her checkout lane, but she only actually scanned about a third of the items. About $1.500 of merchandise went out the door free of charge. My response out loud was, oh. My response in my head was, did you seriously not see the camera mounted above every single register? I had an ex who seemed great, but apparently was a thief and I didn't realize immediately. His job was to run this storage unit office. And from what I understand, large amounts money kept going missing. All the time. So he got fired. But he was the only one that ran the place. And it seemed like a decent 9-to-5 job. MF. And he had just bought a new car. And I'm the one who always paid for food when we ate. He acted like it was my duty. I realized he was actually really shady. And apparently not smart. And he had already made a few comments I didn't like. So I distanced myself from him.